Welcome to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. I'm Elder Michael.
And I am Officer Charmaine.
Excellent. Today we have a very fascinating presentation, which has to do with finances. This is the contribution of slavery to the world's economy. And believe me, it was I should say, it still is a magnificent contribution. Officer Charmaine?
Yes, absolutely. Remember, guys, you are listening to History Meets Prophecy with Elder Michael and myself, Officer Charmaine. And once again, thank you for joining us today. And remember, this is a very interactive session. So we look forward to all of your comments or your questions, your concerns, whatever you may have. And in addition to that, please do not forget to like, to comment, to subscribe, to share. And don't forget, if you would like to join the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, there is a form below this video, and you just load it up, fill it out, and send it back to us, and somebody will get back to you. But as Elder Michael said, we have an amazing session. I'm so excited today. It's something completely different than what we've done in the past. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this.
What I like about it, Officer Charmaine, is the fact that today, when most people think about slavery, there's a very negative concept. Of course, it is that I'm not trying to take away from that, but in order for that to be fully comprehended in its fullness, in other words, you have to look at what the slaves did for America, for Europe, for the entire world. They have laid the foundation for the economic prosperity and empowerment. And we have to look at that picture, understand it, and we can't give all the information, but we could give insight into, future research and investigation.
Yes. Peace, James. Yes. And welcome everyone. Welcome, Hilaire.
Yes.
So there is one thing that, I just lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
This is what happens when you're getting older, right?
Well, when you're getting too excited, I would say.
Yeah. Anyways, it will come back to me.
Definitely.
But yes, definitely we are going to have an amazing session. Slavery and the world's economy. It is a very packed subject, but this is what I wanted to get to. We started off a few weeks ago talking about slavery in general, in particular, August being Freedom Month. And yes, we made the case for August being Freedom Month. August is Freedom Month.
Yes.
And today is part of that series, for lack of a better term. So this is all in the August is Freedom Month initiative. And also just to let you know that the Israelite Nation here in Toronto, we're having our family day. So as soon as this is finished, I'm going to head out to the park and join the rest of the brethren and all those that's coming out to celebrate family day with us. So if you guys are out there and listening, hello, we're here.
Definitely. Yes.
August is some food for us.
And I hope that our listeners and our viewers will take the time to bridge the gap, to understand why from last couple of weeks when we started the process, why we celebrate August and not necessarily February.
Right.
Because there's more dynamics to it. There's a greater foundation to August. This is when William Wilberforce, just a refresher, passed the bill in the British Parliament that freed the slaves to the point where there was no more slave trade in the British Empire, so to speak. So with that having been said, then let's move on and take a look at why or the contribution that our foreparents have made to the world's economy. And believe me, this contribution was terrific.
Okay, so before we begin with our first slide, I would like to introduce two amazing individuals that will be talking today. It just so happened that we have one from the US and one from the UK. And remember, as Elder Michael said, when we spoke about Freedom Month, we involved Canada, the US, and the UK. So it just so happened, it wasn't planned this way, but it worked out this way. And it's just such an amazing idea. So The first,
Yes, that's a very good point. Now we could have commentary or input from the UK and from the US.
yeah.
And Canada being at the border is the fulfillment almost of the prophecy. You know, it's beautiful the way it's turned out. So I can't wait to hear what they have to say.
Let's have the first slide and then we'll introduce the first guest. Okay.
Yes.
Let's have the first slide. Right. I just want to go through this very quickly just to give you an idea of what we are speaking about. Remember, this is slavery and the world's economy. And as Elder Michael stressed, this is how the slavery industry, the slave industry, how the world has benefited from the slave industry,
That's
in
right.
particular, the slave industry that took place during the time of 1619 up until this time today.
Yes.
Okay, so it says the enslavement of a nation. This title is Old Money. It says here, the enslavement of a nation of people in the Americas, also referred to as the New Egypt. So remember, we've often spoke about the New Egypt, identifying North America as the New Egypt, by the nations of peoples of the west of Western Europe, created the economic engine that funded modern capitalism. And this is where we're going today. We're going to show you how slavery funded modern capitalism. Slavery rests at the foundation of modern capitalism and is often synonymous with the sugar, tobacco, and cotton plantations. And just to let you know, we're not demonizing capitalism because that, some in some form or way, everybody benefits to a degree, but we are showing you how this industry that we're living in today, or this world that we're living in today, was actually funded by slavery. So it's not to demonize capitalism. So remember that, because people get into this idea that, oh my gosh, capitalism is terrible, terrible. No, we're just showing you a process that took place, which is very important, just to show you why we are where we are today.
Yes, it's a good point that you're making because sometimes it is not necessarily the structure, but it is the people who are not properly prepared to handle that structure. Or
Exactly.
yeah, they misappropriate the situation. They do not have the skill sets that are necessary because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we have to work in a collaborative environment, one that every person that's involved, all the participants could benefit to some extent. But we have to remember we're talking about prophecy. And this is where the history comes in because the prophecy was foretold long ago, and now here comes the actual situation. So yes,
Yeah. So Wandia is asking, enslavement was before 1619, right?
that's
Yes,
correct.
absolutely. There are many countries that had slave industries way, way, way before 1619. But what we are referring to in particular is the enslavement that took place at the time of 1619 when the first ship landed on the coast of Virginia. So this,
Right. And
yes,
to your point, Officer Charmaine, there's
mhm,
only one nation in history,
yes,
one nation that was enslaved from the king all the way to the beggar in the street
right.
and transported by ship.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm just going to finish off reading this and then we're going to invite our first guest. And you're going to be so excited to see who it is. I'm so excited. Okay, so it says here, where were we? Okay, as a result, it is fair to say that the foundations of many notable corporations that were funded by Western European and American merchants prior to roughly 100 years ago benefited directly or indirectly from slavery. This is owed money. So essentially, what this is saying that slavery was based on the sugar, the tobacco, and the cotton plantation. So a lot of the slaves, when they were taken to the U.S. in particular, they were farmed out to these different locations, and they were responsible for, working with the sugar, the tobacco, and the cotton plantations. Actually, the sugar plantation was primarily the Caribbean and um, yes,
Yes.
South America as well. Yes, so
Now,
that was primarily that area. But what
Yes.
it's basically saying here is that most corporations, especially those that are over 100 years old, they were or they benefited directly or indirectly from this industry.
Absolutely correct, Officer Charmaine. And I'd like to put it in its proper perspective, because when you go back before the slaves got to the Americas, they were sold by the Mohammedans to the Christians,
Mhm.
and the Christians brought them to the shores of Virginia. So, as I would like to put it, and then when I look at Virginia, I see what is now called the United States. And Virginia, we're at Jamestown, which was named after King James. uh, that was the entree, so to speak. So, what I'm suggesting is you have the Christian plantation that was established throughout the United States that employed or used the slavery to build the economy of the United States. It's
Okay.
very important that we put it in that perspective to begin the process.
Okay, Elder Michael, it's not fair that you will be talking about the United States when we have a guest who's sitting there waiting patiently to be on this call. So
That's the entree. That's
without
the entree.
without further ado, I would like to welcome Elder Jeffrey from the United States.
Michael, Officer Shemaine. Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome, Elder
Welcome.
Jeffrey.
All
Welcome.
right. Yeah, no, glad to be here. I got to say, I'm a big fan of the program. Ever since you guys started this, it's been fabulous. So I'm very honored to be here and to be a part of this discussion. Thank you for having me.
And
Thank
we are honored to have you. Really, we are. So, because we know that you are so knowledgeable. Before we go on, I just want to read Felicia's questions. And she's asking, who is the founding father of or fathers of capitalism?
Well, if I had to say anything, I would say it's not limited to one person. I think that the introduction to capitalism is a Christian concept. That's my take on it, because I see all the Christians coming from the UK and coming to the United States and exploiting the situation of slavery. And they're using what is now called, that process is now called capitalism. In other words, slave labor to produce a product or service from which they can make a tremendous profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I see nothing wrong with that, like you said before. It is just a matter of the fullness of it was not utilized. In other words, those who produced the labor did not get paid at that
Right.
time.
Yes,
At all.
yes, right.
Yeah.
Capitalism is about making money,
Yes.
but how it's made, that is the thing that we're questioning right now.
Sure.
But Jeff,
Sure.
what do you have to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100% agree. And that America is the country that really developed it to its fullest, right? So the concept of capitalism was there before. And understand what that is, right? During the colonization, when people would go out, when Europeans would go out to different nations, they would go and they would plant their flag and they would say, I'm here on behalf of the king and the church.
Right.
And
Yes.
for the king and the church. So as
Right.
Elder Michael was saying, at a certain point here in the Americas, merchants, rich men, landowners were like, hey, we want to pull power from the king and now have it for ourselves. So that instead of we have this allegiance to the king, we have allegiance to the what we today corporation.
Right.
Today we have allegiances to the companies. That's why in the beginning, only individuals who are landowners and business owners could even vote. Right. That's really what it's about. It was about bringing power so that the corporations and companies now would have say and dictate, and not have to pay homage to a king and not have to give their taxes to a king, but that, they would call it freedom or free market, they would call it, in order to be able to, do what they wanted to do and not be controlled.
We have a comment here by James, and he says, I remember working in the tobacco and cotton fields. That is actually quite incredible. I would definitely love to speak to you more about this experience.
What I would like to ask, James, is did you get paid, or did you do this as your own entrepreneurship?
That is the question.
Yeah, because I remember as a boy also working in the sugar plantation. We didn't have cotton, but we grew sugar cane. We did not grow tobacco, but all our food, actually 90% of it, was homegrown. So I see this, and as we said earlier, as a very constructive process, because you could be totally independent if you don't mind my saying that. To some,
Sure.
or at least 90%. Let me put it in perspective. So it is just a matter. In this case, we had free labor or labor without payment, and the management thereof, and the profitability thereof, and they forgot about the workers.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues with pure capitalism.
Yeah.
Capitalism, profit.
Mhm.
Profit at all means, right? So there's no morality, there's no workers, it don't matter. Whatever I can do to extract as much profit as possible for myself,
Yeah.
that's really the freedom that they're talking about. That's
So
what really
is it fair to say
happened.
then? Is it fair to say that maybe there's another dynamic? Maybe they knew who the slaves were, and maybe
Mhm.
they did everything to keep them in their place, as
Mhm.
opposed to paying them a dollar or two. Or let's say they had to go through with 400 years of slavery, but they decided to put aside a little bit of the profit, say 10%, until they became free after the 400 years. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Okay, so we have another comment here by C. Fields. It says, I picked cotton also. And this is directed at James Gibbs. I'm telling you, I would love to speak to you guys just
Yeah.
to figure out, the nature of picking cotton
Yeah,
or tobacco. It's really quite interesting,
it
especially
is. It is.
as Elder Michael said, were you paid when you were doing
Yes. Did you get paid?
where that's the big question, right? Because that's the issue at hand. Slavery, when you think about it, it was free labor. And
Mhm.
why was it allowed to happen for such a long time? That's because everybody was profited from it, and
Right.
we weren't allowed to profit from it. you know
Yes.
if you were born, as long as your mother is a slave, you're a slave. It didn't matter, right?
Right.
They didn't even think about the fathers because they knew that some of them were, being naughty, right? So they didn't want the children to be freed at that point in time.
Yes.
So you're looking at, slavery was free labor, and this is why it continued for such a long time. They stole us from our homes, took us, by ships, and then brought us to a land. Many of us perished on that journey, and even on the next slide, it will go into some of the figures that actually, and I don't even believe these figures. I think they were a lot worse. This is just from one source that I got this from, but there were millions of us,
Right.
that perished during that journey, just so that somebody could get free labor.
Again, profit at all costs, right? Profit at all
Yeah.
costs. That's really was the pure capitalism is. And
Right.
so,
So
yeah.
yeah. So James says yes. He was paid $7 a day. That's ridiculous.
Okay, so he was not a slave. That's good, James. Hey,
Wow.
$7 a day. I don't know, right?
Wow. Wow.
I don't know.
What would you
however,
make? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
was close. He was close.
yeah. Yes,
Wow.
So
definitely exploited.
what
Yeah.
I like about this subject is the fact that I see the spiritual dynamic there, and
Yeah,
I
sure.
see it's the hand of the God of Israel. Yes, we have to be punished because we made a serious mistake. Our disobedience, after being corrected over and over, we failed to yield to that correction, and we had to be punished. This is a father and his children. However, in order to ensure that that punishment was manifested, it's almost like the enemy had to do a job on us as well. And like you said,
Mhm.
Elder Jeffrey, they had to, that element of greed almost set in at the beginning. So money, profit, like you said, without any concern for those that are providing the labor. So I see the full picture, and I kind of like that in the sense that
Mhm.
it gives me an understanding of where we are as a people and how we can overcome some of the difficulties that we
So
today.
you look at, the nature of slavery was so horrendous to the point whereby, there are many countries within Africa that was pillaged and raped and destroyed and devastated because all the natural resources were taken, and
Right.
likewise places in India and many other countries as well. But it was all about greed, and you know greed to the point that there was no morals, there was no respect, there was no regard for human life.
Right.
especially the life of the children of Israel, the Jacobites. There was no regard
100%.
for them. You know,
And if I and to note, we're talking about 1619, even prior to that, and then coming up to slavery in 1619 compared to how it was administered in 1865 it got worse and
it got
worse.
worse.
One of the things that took place is that how can we extract as much labor from these people as much as possible? And so they had, this is part of their scientific method of trying to figure out how can we make them work to the point of breaking without breaking.
Right.
So let me just tell you a little quick story. So I'm right now I'm in St. Louis, right by the Mississippi and Gateway of the West. So we have a lot of Louisiana, Mississippi, and people from those descents who've come through here. But I'm originally from New York, New Jersey area, and I used to work on Wall Street. So a few years back, while they were building a building on Wall Street, they came across some bones as they were digging up and excavating. And they did the research. They found out, oh wow, this goes all the way back to pre-Civil War when they had slaves, and it ended up being a slavery burial ground. Yeah. So they stopped the construction, and they took the bones to Howard University to research them. And when they researched them, what they found out is that in this grave right here on Wall Street, which again, that connection of Wall Street and our connection to the financial industry, what they found out is that what these people died of, they were worked to death.
Wow.
Worked to death, right? Worked put to death. And so again, the slaves that came in 1619, their experience wasn't quite like that because it was new. But again, because of pushing capitalism to its brink to pull and extract as much labor and money as possible, they got to a point where they got it down to the science to really work people to the point that they can get as much as they can out of them to the point.
Wow. That I'm so glad that you came on, giving us an insight here. But at this time, I would like to introduce our other guest who's sitting in the waiting room. And this is a newly baptized brethren, and I'm so excited to have her on. And her name is Safia, and she's from the United Kingdom. So we're covering the globe here. Well, the world.
Welcome, Safia.
The world.
Hello. Hi, peace, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Peace and welcome, Safia.
Thank you.
Yes, I think you're representing the colonists, if I can say that, because
I hope not.
Had it not been for you, there'd be no United States. So,
well, I hope to represent Barbados too. So I hope that at least makes up for.
Okay, so the colonists and the colony. Okay, that's good.
The colony, yes.
Okay.
There was a question earlier, and it was with regards to somebody mentioned, was it Angel? I think she said something with regards to, it's funny how capitalism happened started in the United States, and every single dollar bill you see the symbols of Egypt.
That's right.
Yes.
And that kind of sets the ball rolling. Egypt was the powerhouse back in its day. Now, yes. North America is the powerhouse today.
Yeah, I think that goes to your point earlier, Officer Sherman, when you mentioned that it is the new Egypt, and it's very interesting because we were slaves in the old, slaves in the new. We built some of the best cotton of the old Egypt and some of the best cotton in the new Egypt. So there's so much similarity that I don't see how people can make a mistake with who we are and who they are.
Yes, I actually found out today a really interesting fact regarding Egypt's connection to the cultivation of cotton in America. In 1966, it was confirmed that cotton did not originate in the Americas. It was brought to the Americas by the very first settlers. So when the Kingdom of Nubia was cultivating cotton in Egypt, it was then taken to the Americas. So actually by the Egyptians, and that has been confirmed since 1966. 1966 by S.G. Stevens. I wanted to make sure I got my facts right for this show.
No,
That's
I
good.
mean that's a really excellent point, but it also goes to the point that we made earlier, that a lot of the resources were stolen and taken away from a lot of these other countries, especially the natural resources, in order to enrich the Americas. So thank you for that, because that just proves the point.
Yes.
Exactly.
This proves a
Yes.
great point. Thank you. Wow. So let's go to some fact checks here. Okay, so it says here that over 12 million people were removed from the shores of West Africa, and like I said, I beg to differ. I believe it's a lot more than that. Really, in
yeah.
400
Yeah,
years,
absolutely.
it goes a lot more than that. But okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with what's out there right now. So it says over 12 million people were removed from the shores of West Africa. 4% were taken to the United States, and over 2 million slaves were believed to have perished en route, including 19,000 slaves who died whilst transported by the Colston Company. This is we're going to be talking about this one later on, but this is Colston's, what is it? The Royal, where is it?
RAC.
Oh, the Royal African Company, right. So this is the shipping company from Colston. But we're going to do a little case study about him later on. But you look at the numbers of people that were actually affected during this process, during this whole 400-year period. How many people were affected? How many people were removed? There were like villages, there were cities of people that were removed from where they were living and brought to the New Egypt. And even en route, how many millions perished? So much more perished than that. That's just a silly figure there.
Right.
But so
Yes.
much more perished. It's
Yes.
unbelievable, really unbelievable.
Yes.
I know back in school we did a study about the triangular trade, and it showed the route of from West Africa to the Americas and then to Europe. So Europe was becoming rich while this was happening, rich in resources as well. So wow.
Yeah,
So
100%.
since this is Freedom Month, I think it is important to stress the fact that in order to gain that freedom, we have to understand the rationale behind our enslavement. So that way we could take the steps that are necessary, not just to get out of slavery, but to return to our Father's house, to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and to worship him in spirit and in truth, because our failure to do that is what caused us to end up on the cotton fields, what caused us to end up picking tobacco, et cetera, et cetera. And we haven't recovered yet. Just a small portion of us have recovered. And now we of the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, we are grateful to our elder Shadrach because he recognized this need from almost 40 years ago, and he did something about it. That's why we are here. We're here to show the world that we can turn this problem around from a negative situation to a positive structure. Yes, we suffered. Yes, the enemy made a lot of money at our expense, but we're not here to blame them for doing it. We're here to see how we now could turn the tables around and even teach the enemy or the children thereof so that they can serve our
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Great point. Great point, Elder Michael. And I would say that's one thing, so many times here in St. Louis, when we're teaching and letting people understand who they are, it's hard for them to digest it.
Yes.
Right? It's hard for them to digest that we are the chosen people of the book. We are God's chosen people, because for these 400 years, a part of why it worked is the psychological training of us to think that we are less than human, less than capable, less than all these various things that are less than, and that our fight has been like, oh, we want to be equal, not knowing that, no, you're beyond equal, you're chosen. And so understanding that even in our demise, how much value we brought to this nation and to this world, even in the state that we're in. And there's this particular reason, like you said, why would a nation go all the way out to Timbuktu, literally out to Timbuktu, to bring 12 million people to come in and work? Like, it's more than just labor, right? There's a value here that everyone sees, but we don't see it in ourselves. That this nation, this world could not have been where, as far as, technology and all the progress that we made, without utilizing us as the resource, as the raw resource to make that happen.
Yes, no, absolutely. You put that into such a beautiful way, such a clear perspective of where we came from, and the suffering. It's I think I first heard the term from Elder Andor, but it came from I can't remember her name, but it's post-traumatic stress
Syndrome.
It's a post-traumatic syndrome, and it's something that is inherited among the children of slavery. It's something, everybody walks around with a degree of inferiority, because that's what's been programmed into our parents, their parents, their parents' parents, and so on and so forth. And it's like, unless you actually understand who you are, you have that in the back of your mind that, maybe you're not as good, and this is something that, as the nation, as the Israelite nation, we're trying to encourage people to understand that you are, as you said, we are so much better than that. We are handpicked by the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. How incredible is that? We are, and it's like, yes, we have been reduced to nothing, but if you only knew, you would have respect for yourself and your brethren and your
absolutely. Absolutely.
So at this point, I'm gonna put Safia on the spot. Safia,
yes,
do you have anything for us?
I know exactly what that means, and yes, of course I do. When I was asked to jump on this enriching discussion, I was thinking about how I can unite the commentary of on the topics of today, as well as grace the surface of speaking about the spiritual economy. I was actually recently having a discussion with someone about their future prospects, and it's very interesting how we tend to go straight for being laborers rather than thinking of ourselves in leadership roles, or thinking we can be owners of the companies. We're always the people who are seen but never behind the scenes as well. So who is controlling how much wealth we even accumulate? So just listening to this conversation, it's a constant debate and struggle within our community. And I would like to just mention now, before I forget, that one thing I love so much about this nation is the encouragement for self-development and self-esteem. I love that. Like, I leave every single lesson feeling fortified and wonderful, and there's no suppression of the spirit here. It's truly about growth, and I have not found that anywhere else, hence why I am here.
Absolutely, yes.
To that.
Testify. Amen.
That's why I'm here. Absolutely. So without further ado, here is a poem. For those of you who do not know, as well, I am actually writing a poem a day to celebrate Freedom Month on the topics of Black British history, because we do not know much about, when I type in, Black history. In fact, when I did type in Black history, the first two people that came up were Martin Luther King and Beyonce. And I said, no. There needs to be, literally, not even anybody else. It was, oh my gosh. I'm so serious. So I had to do something. I had to, just do something the best that I could. So every day I'm writing a poem. I'm providing facts about, providing information about the different thing that I discovered or person, so you can learn about from 4,000 BC to, from medieval England to the Stone Age in England, and find out about the Black people there, and also Israelites. I have found Israelites in history, so please check it out on my Instagram, and I will provide all of those details after this poem. Okay.
Doreen's asking, how do we get the audio version of the poems a day?
Okay, so the audio versions are available on every platform. If you go to Instagram, my name's Safia Kamaria. Every single day, I also am providing an audio as well as the fact cards as well. One thing about the Israelite Nation, you will learn to do things that you did not know how to do before. So there we go. So I have provided audio for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so here is today's poem.
Thank you.
The treasures of my people lie in the catacombs of your conquest, because the centuries of our magnificent customs and cultures have still not sufficed your bloodthirst. You have also catalogued our wisdom, hair braiding, and even our potato salad recipes. Is the new world not enough? Are the callous holidays, offensive idols, and lies smothered in lavender fields not enough? Shackles have been traded for gold crosses and bejeweled grills. The initials of masses have been swapped for burning ink on skin yet to be emblazoned with its true story. And you, merchant, you dare ask me for the price of my soul? By firelight, swarms of my people chopped and bound, the crop worth more than an ebony woman without a tongue. Duppies would give birth to each other in those fields. Exhausted limbs would hunt for freedom on their own accord, while monsters of steel munched on the laborers too weak to move their hands in time. Do you know who I am? Who my clan is? Who still live and are now blossoming like peonies in June? No, sir. I know how you like to dangle Swarovski-crusted horns above our heads, but so long as there is faith, there is still a fighting chance to be delivered from your Gucci grip, your pop cultural prism, your fame-obsessive obelisk. I do not serve your God. I do not bow to a putrid, ungroomed, teething, greasy, pathetic wannabe. My prayers are riper than fallen mangoes. My tongue has been spiked with psalms. My eyes and ears have engulfed the senses of 1,005 warriors. Do you think that though my feet are brittle from running through my nightmares and my face has grown ravines from tears, that I am still not able to know when I am being swindled, sir? I know sin. I know the fragility of man and the strains we are plagued with. I grew comfortable around them like teddy bears because I thought that was my inheritance, but my heritage is so much more. I am not just bone and pain. I am fight and freedom and truth and jazz music and loyalty which basks in the dawn long after the conversation has ended. So though you intend to offer an unfair exchange for the rate of my soul, maybe you should ask, what does it mean to truly be rich?
Oof.
Wow. So honest and you. Oh my
That's
God.
amazing.
That was
Amazing.
wonderful.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oof.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Safia. Thank you. We really appreciate that. Wow.
It speaks to the value of our people.
Yes.
People that, I tell you, as you're talking, I'm getting emotional, but I've managed to contain it. The interesting part is this. We were sold into bondage, but the one who owned us has not surrendered the deed. He has not surrendered the title, right? He still owns each one of us. And that's the power that we share as a family. And the enemy may pay a price, but he can never get the full value.
Right.
And keep in mind that one slave was worth 4 to 5 times the value of the average individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. That was just so incredible. You're right. It's like I'm just trying to contain myself as well.
Yes.
Let it soak in. So we
Wow.
talk about the value that we have. How do you put a price tag on that?
That's it.
What's the price tag on that?
Can't.
Right? I mean, just think about exactly. Just think
Yeah.
about that. The impact that the voice and the creativity and just the spirit that you feel, how it touches people, and they can go on, and that can empower them to do something that you would never know, you wouldn't even know. You planted those seeds and those voices that you just give out, and you never know how big an impact you're having in the world from this one act. And that's one. Now times that by 12 million, like we just spoke about. The impact that we have is just it's like you can't calculate it because of who we are and the value that we bring to every environment that we enter.
Yeah.
So it's amazing when you think about it.
There's one thing that I used to talk to teacher Jaden back in the day, and I would say to him, if we built the United States and the European economy with one hand tied behind our back, can you imagine what we could do with both hands stretched forth to the heavens?
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I quote you a lot on it, Michael. I quote you. I use it a lot.
I'll be sending you a letter from my wife.
He's looking for his 10% there.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. It's true. It's true. It's true. But,
This-
you know, even in calculating it, you know, and there's different ways that when they're talking about reparations, they try to, well, how do we calculate what's owed? Let's do it labor and employment. Let's say if we did pay them a minimum wage over these past 400 years, how much would it be? Or how much was a slave worth at that time? And in any ways, and those numbers are just so astronomical. For example, in the 1860s, right after the Civil War, the number of slaves, the value of number of slaves that were here in the United States was worth more than every industry that was in, more than all the banks put together, more than all the machinery put together, more than all the ships put together, more than any other industry. The value of the number of the slaves that were here, just in purchase price and those dollars, was worth more than anything else, any other product, because we were property then, that the United States had. That was our value then.
That is something. And the funny thing is, it was only the slaves that was bought that was of value, because there were others. There were the natives of the land. They did not retain that type of value. There are those that that came from other places, such as India, even Ireland. They did not retain their value. In addition to that, those that did come, they were never subjected to the type of treatment that we were. And when they came, they worked for a time, and then they were released and set free and did whatever. But we were in a perpetual bondage. There was no hope for us. Wow.
I want to thank Felicia for her donation. Thank you, Felicia.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you
very much. Thank you. So we have our next slide. This is called Modern Capitalism. And this is just to give some background. The slides are there just for guidance. It's just to provide some background, but, please feel free to speak to whatever aspect of what, our discussion today. It says here for modern capitalism, it says from New York Life to the Bank of America, many companies have benefited from slavery. And this is what we discussed before. Many companies even acknowledged their involvement in slavery and offered apologies in an attempt to reconcile their tainted history. However, is an apology enough? And what is reparations? Slavery has diminished the quality of life for the descendants of slaves, and simultaneously enhanced the quality of life for white Americans and Western Europeans. What say ye?
Amazing. And this has come up recently, especially over the past couple of years after George Floyd and what they would call, the Freedom Summer. And there's been a lot of racial reckoning, they would call it, and discussions about that. And then the pushback that came with the critical race theory and banning books and things like that. So this has been in the headlines quite a bit to say what is it that is owed, and what benefits have had, and are people alive today responsible for paying that debt? That's kind of what the question goes into. So it's definitely in the headlines, and it's one of the things where sometimes people will make the statement, "Well, I didn't have any slaves, or my family didn't have any slaves, so what? Why do I have any responsibility towards this?" And there's just so many ways to answer that. But one of the things to look at is to try to even look at a very base level how do slaves picking cotton impact the whole economy, right? And that's why sort of looking at how the economy functioned at that time as capitalism was just getting off, just getting off its starting gate and starting to really blossom, making America one of the richest countries in the world at that time. That how did that happen? Well, you have that base thing where you have the raw materials that's being used and that's being fought, which in America, again, it grew to become cotton. It was tobacco, it didn't become cotton. I know in the Caribbean, a lot of times it was sugar and things like that, but here it was cotton. And it was about 50%, if not more, of the exports from America was coming from cotton. I think it's actually more than that. And so you have that. So you have the labor. The only way you're going to get that cotton is by having the labor to do it. And that's where the slaves come in. Well, as I said, part of it was, well, how do we extract as much from them as possible? Sun up to sundown and beatings. If they did a certain amount, how do we get more out of them? So, to really get that going. So that you needed a management staff, you needed overseers, right? You needed to have a police staff to police the area to make sure all these millions of slaves, can stay intact, right? On top of that, people in the North would be able to invest in these type of things so that they can then make money, so that they don't personally have to own any slaves, but they can have investments into these plantations, into these business dealings that allows that takes the cotton from the South, shipping it all the way to the North, having it go into the processing factories and manufacturers, then being created into different textiles, and then being shipped out to Europe and all around the world. All along the way, that takes a whole industry. That takes people that are doing shipping. That takes factories. That takes all these people. Their jobs depend on those slaves picking that cotton. And on top of that, it's like, well, what happens if there's damage, if there's problems? You have insurance companies now that are going to now ensure that if a slave dies, if he is killed, if he runs away, if he's stolen, that the slave master can now get paid and reimbursed, for damages to their property, which is what we were called back then. So now you have this whole big insurance industry that's now making money off of the slaves. And then you have banks that are making money because now, if I want to expand my plantation, well, what are your assets? Well, I got 20 slaves. They're worth X number $1,000. I'm going to give you a loan and pay interest off of that loan. So I'm just trying to give people just step by step an idea of understanding. When we talk about being the foundation of the economy, you don't have to have pick cotton in order to do that. You don't have to have a plantation to benefit from that. All these industries are created and sustained and maintained and grew to astronomical amounts based upon the backs of our forefathers picking cotton. Just want to give a sense of that.
That's a beautiful point. I have a list here of some of the United States of America, some of the companies that actually exist today that actually benefit. So it's speaking right to your point. And I'm just going to give you just some idea, how they stand right now. I don't know who's to say, but just to give you an idea of some of these companies, and especially the insurance companies and the banks. For example, you have AIG, which is the American International Group, the Bank of America. You have Brooks Brothers, which is a clothing retail store. You have the New York Life Insurance Company. You have Tiffany & Co. Oh, I really like Tiffany as well. Anyways, we have USA Today. We have JP Morgan Chase. We have Lehman Brothers. So these are some of the companies or organizations today that have benefited directly or indirectly. And it doesn't stop there, because there are companies in Canada and the United Kingdom. And to what you were actually saying, you're talking about the profits and the resources. Many of that were shipped to England, and many of that was shipped to different parts of Europe. And they became incredibly wealthy, that to the point whereby when the time for the bill for slavery to be abolished, it was something that they found easier because they had received so much wealth. It's like, okay, now somebody's got a conscience, right? Now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, well, that's probably a bad thing that we're doing. But even in abolishing slavery, so many people, as you said, receive insurance payouts. You know, it's like, hold on a sec. And those that were enslaved got nothing, nothing. As a matter of fact, it's actually been said that many have paid that insurance. You know, many of the enslaved paid that insurance through their own labor afterwards. I'm like, wow, that is incredible. That is incredible, crazy, and terrible at the same time. I can read some of the companies in the United Kingdom. You have Barclays Bank, for example, Lloyd's Coffee House, Lloyd's of London, um, the London News Stock Exchange, the Bank of England, the Church of England. Oh my gosh, they were a big one. My goodness. We have the National Gallery, the Royal Dockyard, Thomas King. I don't know what this is, but look at that.
Absolutely.
Look at that.
Yes,
Wow.
everybody had their hand in it. Everybody, because it was lucrative. It was big business. It was like, if you're a capitalist, if you're gonna make money, you're gonna find a way of how can I get attached to this in some form or fashion. I don't have to be a plantation owner in order to benefit from that. There's so many other ways, and how it just would multiply itself throughout the economy, and that's how the economy grew and grew and grew. And it's all exploitation. That's why it was so important for them to be able to find what is the best way to pull as much profit from these people as possible. Even when the slave trade was outlawed, well, how do we, even with the slaves that we have, make sure they don't run away and make sure that they are as fruitful as possible. So I don't need to import slaves anymore. I can just make sure and have these breeding farms so that we can have as many homegrown slaves as possible.
Yes.
So it was big business, and it was one of the first times that they really took this industry and really see how can we turn as much money from it as possible.
We have a comment here from Herbert, and this is for you, Safia, and I completely agree. He says, Safia is a bona fide jewel. She's able to verbalize feelings and thoughts that most struggle in abstract thoughts. I definitely wish to see her creation.
Nice. I agree.
Thank you. Herbert. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much, Herbert. I think that that's actually it slightly relates to a point I was about to make regarding reparations and how do we bridge ideas between thought and creation, and how do we allow things to manifest, because I think this thing about what does reparations, I love this question, what does reparations actually mean? What does that look like? And when does reformation come into it? Reformation of society, because is just paying out money enough? What about racist institutionalism? What about the reformation of prison systems? So how do we, and what about spiritual what about this spiritual economy? And this is something that I've been thinking. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot more since I knew this topic was coming up. What does that mean spiritually? So this idea of just paying in paying people in material goods, how are the wrongs written? I mean, so 2015. Up until 2015, so I actually stayed at the house of someone, or a castle, if you were, of someone who was still being paid for the reparations of the slave trade. So from the family losing money up until 2015, they were still being paid from the damages done from the end of the slave trade, but their thoughts and feelings about race, ethnicity had still not necessarily changed. So does a money exchange actually change the society in itself, and how do we go about that? So I would even say that we need to take that a step further and talk about reparations and what else. Yes.
You see, that's very interesting, because there's only so much that they can do on their own. You see, if you look at the jar at 100%, the most that they could contribute would be, say, 20, and today's world, maybe even less. The rest we have to do, because and I say that, because I know we are Israelites. It's the God of Israel, and then we are the ones. It's him, his heavenly host, and then on earth, We're the Israelite nation. We're in charge. But we have to grow into that position through obedience and through constructive behavior, following the terms and that he has laid out in his laws, statutes, and judgments. These are important aspects that we need to follow. A father to his children, again, that is still there. The other point that I like to make is all of this, as terrible as it may seem, it illustrates the individual. It tells you who has the capacity to do what. We are underestimating our authority. We have to learn how to work together, how to harmonize, how to bring our skill sets together. We don't have to be the top in terms of every one of us being in the top level, because together we are at the top. That's what we have to understand and appreciate and work with.
Yeah, so Felicia actually said that it all depends on us returning to
That's
our
right.
Father, the
That's
God
right.
of Israel.
Yes.
And
That's
I
right.
completely agree. Thank
That's
you.
right. That's right.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. And I think I think about that. Remember the 400, where our this was even before any of the George Floyd stuff, right? Because we were focused on remembering that milestone of 400 years when our forefathers came to Jamestown, as we're speaking about, right? And so, although we speak about this, and I know Michael says this quite a bit, although we speak about this and we're talking about this is what individuals did to us, this is what these companies participated in, this is what this country and the societies and whether it's Europe, whether it's England, whether it's America, the new Egypt did to us, and we understand all that. Ultimately, we can't look to them for the answer, right? They need to be responsible. They need to be held accountable. But I don't care what they do, they're not going to solve the problem. And it reminds me of a skit from Dave Chappelle when his show was out a few years ago. When in one, I don't know if you guys remember that, it was an episode where reparations came through, and everybody, all Black people got big checks of money, and all these various things. So if the check came in Friday at 6:00, guess what? By Friday at 8:00, 90% of that back again in the white community. Yeah. So what benefit did it really do, or would it do? So if we don't really, like you said, return to our Father and have a reformation of our mind, of our understanding of who we are and our spirituality, all the money in the world is not going to make a difference. Exactly. So that's why when we talk about history, we don't forget it. We don't glaze over it. We hold people accountable for what they did. But also we have ourselves also responsible for what we do going forward, because that's really those choices that we make is really going to dictate exactly what our future is. And it's really tied to who do we have our allegiance to? Who do we have our spirit tied to? How do we have the understanding about who we are? Because if we don't do that, it's not going to make a bit of difference.
Yes, as Sophia says here, how can we get by Christianity and tackle these points? No one wants to hear the truth, and Black people seems to believe our history just goes back as far as Africa.
It's a very good point, because people don't understand that the slave trade is a Christian institution. Slavery is a Christian institution. And I don't know if you have the next slide ready, but I wanted to
Yes, I was just going to bring this up. Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, there it is. It gives the growth of what I call corporate Christianity. As you can see on the left and on the right of the circle, these are Christian institutions, right? There's a Pleasant Hill Baptist Shrine in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and there's what is a Zion Chapel AME Shrine, which is in Harrisburg, Missouri. The thing, or is it Mississippi? Mississippi. The point I'm making here, look at the Masonic emblem. Why is there Masonic emblem on the cornerstone of a Christian shrine? Now, that's just a rhetorical question. It's to show you that there are one and the same. One of a lower level, and then there's a higher secret level in another format. But this goes bigger than that. The circle is indicating the Israeli Masonic Lodge. And you could see within that, you have the Masonic emblem, you have the Christian cross, you have the Israeli, well, they're using the double triangle, but then you have the Islamic crescent moon. All I'm suggesting here is that at the beginning, it was, well, you can say two. There was the Mohammedans and the Christians. Now there are four. Within 200 years, it's grown. They would not have grown if it wasn't profitable, right? So this is a sample or an example of the contribution of slavery to the prosperity of the world's economy. That one corporation, one corporate entity could be multiplied into four using the spiritual dynamic to make their profit. And of course, the workers remain the same, not knowing exactly what the objective or the long-term goal is. And some of the slaves even became part and parcel of this same foolishness. We have to remember our God. We have to remember why we were the chosen people. And we have to grow into that objective and do according to our Father's will. And this is all that we're trying to
We
say.
also have to remember why we got into that position in the first place. You know, why did we get there? There was a reason. It wasn't, you know, everything seems very physical, but there was a reason why we were enslaved to begin with. You know, there was a contract that was broken, and we paid for that contract. I mean, the terms and conditions are listed there in Deuteronomy. It's, you know, it's written there. It's highlighted, identified. This is what would happen if you break the contract, and we did that, unfortunately, but that's what we did, and this is the repercussion. So yeah.
Agreed, 100%. And these are points that every descendant of slavery need to sit down and come to grips with. This is personal, but we are here to shed light, to allow them to have some measure of structure so that they could find a way to the solution, and then maybe, hopefully, come and hold hands with us and glorify our Father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. We can have a look at the next slide, which goes into the benefits, the athletic benefits of slaves, because
Yes,
this kind of plays right into that.
exactly.
And Mo Gamer says, would you consider the prison system in America to also be slave economics?
I agree 100% with that. I did some research. I did not include it in this presentation because I don't know if we'll have enough time, but the prison system is an offspring of that, just like the athletic system is. Here we have the athletic benefits of the slave. Again, the slaves do all the hard work, right? And the corporations, they benefit. And these are Christian establishments. That's the point I want you to, but don't take us at our word. Investigate this.
Yes.
See, yeah, look at the talent, and how is this talent generated? If you look at it in its fullness, you will see it's a spiritual derogative. It's a spiritual expression. If we are doing these things from a spiritual perspective, keeping in mind we are 70% spiritual, we need to get to know who the Almighty Spirit of all spirits are and glorify Him. Because without that understanding, we are only going to produce half of our capacity, half of our potential.
Even speaking to the whole prison situation, it was actually noted that the reason why, you know, the prison system was so, I guess, impactful towards the black people of America was because that was one way of getting free or cheap labor again, right? So if you have all these people incarcerated, well, let's put them to work. I mean, you know, they're going to be there for a few years. Why not get some work out of them? And it was, oh my goodness, it was just such a terrible system to re-enslave people again. And, you know, people don't really think about it. They don't understand that, you know, by going into that system, you know, by committing a crime and going into that system, you're buying into, or you're playing into the, you know, the whole slavery system, right? I mean,
100%.
at the beginning, you know, there were obviously many people that were incarcerated, you know, by no means, by no fault of their own. You know, they were just caught in the system by accident or set up, and they were taken in and incarcerated. But the whole idea of incarcerating, especially the children of Jacob, is so that they can continue that slave labor. So when people say, well, yeah, we were freed in 1833, 1834, yeah, on paper, but in practice, slavery went on for a lot longer. And if we don't recognize it, it will continue to go on.
100%, yes. And if I could, to your point, so in America, as 1865, as the Emancipation Proclamation was in effect, and then later on that year, it was actually the 13th Amendment which ended slavery, right? And so as you were speaking, I wanted to kind of read just the first line of that, right? Neither slave, this is the 13th Amendment of the United States. This is ending slavery. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime, whereof the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction. So, to your point, going back, right? Even the law, the amendment, the Constitution Amendment that actually outlaws slavery has an exception for incarceration, right? Wow. And so that's why, it's one of those things, like you're saying, if we don't understand our past, you don't understand how this all connects.
Could you
don't understand why things are. Let me read it again. Okay.
Please.
So this is the 13th Amendment. This is the amendment abolishing slavery in the United States, right? Okay. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, wherefore the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction.
So now they've called it now a criminal offense. They're not calling it slavery anymore. And they make it in such a way that you can get in, but you can't get out.
Right.
It's amazing. But you know what? I like to say this again because we said it before. This is not about white versus black.
Right.
No. That's about the truth versus the lie.
Mm-hmm.
This is a spiritual dynamic. This again, we have to look at how we got into this mess. What did we do as a family? And then how do we get out of it? We got to remember our Father, remember his laws, his statutes, his judgments, and determine within ourselves, each one of us and collectively, to correct our mistakes. That's the key.
There's a comment here from Florence. It says here, and the slave catches a runaway, slave catchers become the ones that carry the badge, did turn into law.
Yeah.
I think what she's trying to say here is that, yes, the whole idea of slave catching, you had the catchers, now that became law. They would go out,
police,
go out with the slaves away.
Yeah,
that's right.
So,
That's right. So the convict leasing program, you have the vagrancy laws and all those various things, all these things to make sure that the economy going. Again, capitalism is profit no matter what. So some of the slaves that were freed after Reconstruction, which is a fascinating topic. I love the topic of Reconstruction. After Reconstruction, we go into the Jim Crow era. We go into, the KKK and all those various things. That's when you start having now these same individuals who were once free from it. Now they had to be brought back to work on it. And if they didn't come back, they were put into jail and then leased out to work on the same plantation that they were slaves on years later. So you got to see how the whole system changed in order to continue to exploit us for our gifts and our labor, to make the machine keep going, to make the economy continue to grow. And that's the connection that we have to see.
Cruel and twisted. That's what that was. Really.
But again, in their defense, they're doing their job. They're serving their God. What we have to look within ourselves and ask the question, what is our job? Who is our God? How can we serve him? And this is the point that people look and they blame other people, they point fingers. But the biggest finger is always the thumb pointing back at us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what I love about Israelite Nationwide Ministries, and is that we it's not about us pointing and we're pulling this out to pull the truth so we can see the reality of where we are and understand the situation and understand that the only answer that we have is to return to our God. Yes. And once we do that, no man can stand against us. Right? No
Because
system, no one can stand against us if we do what we're supposed to be doing.
right.
Yeah, it's actually quite humbling to know that you're no longer pointing the finger. It is you. You take responsibility for the things that's gone on. It's a humbling situation.
Yes.
Sorry, Otto Michael.
Okay. So let's look at the other slide. We only have about 20 minutes left.
Yes. Okay, so we're just playing with the title here. Okay, so 40 acres and a mule. Okay. Yes. So we're just playing with the titles here. But of course, we know that emancipation did not bring economic freedom for former slaves, as we discussed earlier. And this is going to your point, Elder Jeffrey. It says here on April 16, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed a bill ending slavery in the District of Columbia, providing for compensation to former slave owners in a region of $300 per slave. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just too sad when you read it. Anyway, it says here.
So just to note, so they celebrate in DC Emancipation Day. Till this day, they still do that for this reason. They celebrate that, but at the same time, like you said, the slave owners are the ones who got the profit from that. So it's crazy.
Wow. And what do they celebrate it in April?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Emancipation Day. Mm-hmm.
All right.
In DC.
All right. We also have here General William T. Sherman's Special Field Order number 15, issued on January 16, 1865. Sherman prescribed the 40 acres in that order, but not the mule. The mule would not come until later. Sherman later ordered that the army would lend the new settlers mules, hence the phrase 40 acre and a mule. Then we have President Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor and sympathizer with the South. So he was not into protecting us, but he overturned General Sherman's famous promise in the fall of 1865, which would have redistributed roughly 400,000 acres to newly freed Black families. There are many arguments, and I remember after we did this discussion, I think it was back in 2019, there was so many people saying, well, it didn't quite go this way, well, it didn't quite go that way. The bottom line is, and this is the bottom line, the slaves received nothing after this was done, after the Civil War. They received nothing. It doesn't matter who promised what, what the discussion was, they received nothing in the end. And that's the issue. So.
Yeah. So I think that regardless of what is said, we have to learn. We have to repeat this. We have to learn from this mistake that we've made. We do not want to go through this again. We have to learn how to come together as a people, come together under the authority of the Spirit of truth, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. There is no other solution to our problem. A lot of us are still enslaved today, even though slavery has long been abolished since 2019. But we're still slaves because we fail to recognize who we are and whose we are.
Exactly.
If we can get these 2 points together and stretch forth our hands to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we can make a difference. Without that, you're just another black man on the street.
So, yeah, if you're right, no, all the money in the world would not free you, would not free your mind until you actually establish your identity. Yes, and that identity, lays far more concrete than what history tells us or what you learn in school, right? So it's all about going back to that source. The source is from the scriptures, and it can only be taught through an Israelite. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, C. Fields is making the point. We move from the fields under a master into the system where we're still enslaved, like our ancestors were. We're taxed, jailed, and still under their thumbs, all because we're trying to change them. We can't change them. We have to change ourselves.
Right.
We are the children of the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
That's
We
right.
have to serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that. There is no other solution to it. Everything has been tried and they've failed. We can't blame the enemy. The enemy is doing a marvelous job. We have to do our job. And this is simple as that. This is why we bring forward this presentation. History now meets prophecy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's go
Now,
And
to the
why
next slide. Sorry, go ahead.
would we, want to, why, if we were in any other position, and if we just think about what we do, if something is working for us, if we are benefiting from something, we ourselves would not necessarily want to change that. So it can only truly come from us. If you have all the power in the world, you're not going to easily give up that power.
mhm,
And not only that, that's a good point. So,
mhm.
the other point is, if the other guys that we're serving see that one of us could produce 4 or 5 times the average man or woman, why not try to hold on to
Of
us? You see
course.
my point?
Right.
Because that is 4 or 5 times the profit coming from one person.
Right. Right. And I think also is, again, going back to one of the points is we don't understand our value, right? We don't understand our value, that even in this state that we're in, we still have value. And if we use it in the right way, especially if under the banner and under the spirit of our God, that we're unstoppable. And we could look at points in our history when we actually have demonstrated that. One of the things that I was thinking about, and that a lot of things that it doesn't get a lot of play sometimes. We hear about Rosa Parks, but I don't think we really hear about the Montgomery bus boycott. And I think that's an example where we show, like, wow, when we work together, we can get things done. And in the Montgomery bus boycott, the whole thing with Rosa Parks, where they had segregated busing, you had to like stand in the back and not sit in the front, and she wouldn't give up her seat, and so went to jail, and it started that part. So what people don't remember is that what that started was the Montgomery bus boycott, which was for 1 year. Every Black person in the city of Montgomery refused to ride on the bus until they changed their policy. And at first they were like, whatever what are they going to do? They need us. They need a bus, right? But after a year, long story short, and it was short on time, after a year, they actually conceded because of the fact that, wow, if they are not riding the bus, we cannot stay in business. We're going to go bankrupt. And so that's just one example, real small example, but it was a pivotal point where I think at one point, not only did it make change, but it also, I think in Black people's mind, we can really affect change. It didn't take guns. It didn't take changing anybody's mind. It was what we decided to do with our money and with our time, with our action, right? If we make a concerted effort to say we're going to do this and not do this, we can move things, and especially if we make the decision to say this is the God we're going to serve, and we're going to put all our efforts and all our gifts under this banner. It's just mind blowing what we can accomplish as a people. And we have to understand that nobody can stand against us if we make that type of movement.
Yeah, that's where the whole unity comes in, uniting for a common cause. And the problem with that is everybody wants to be the leader. Everybody wants to run the ship. Everybody wants
all chiefs and no Indians, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, come on. And do you have a real game plan? We can discuss these things and figure out how we can come together under a common banner to, we probably could have got reparations years and years and years and years ago. But you're right, we're not united. We go off in our own different ways, and everybody has their version of whatever the situation is. And it's just so really unfortunate because we are the only nation that's like that.
Yeah.
The only
No,
nation.
absolutely.
Let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So the next slide, this one is for Safia. See how kind we are.
Thank you. Thank you. Edward Colson. That's the Edward. I remember this very well. I'm not far from where this took place. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, and we're not really going to go deep into this, but this individual, Edward Colson, he actually owned a company called the Royal African Company, the RAC, in 1689, and this company, they had huge ships which were actually trading slaves. So I think the issue or why he came up in 2020 was because his statues was sitting there in the Bristol Harbour, and people paying homage to it. They would donate to his company, to his charities, because of all the good things apparently that he did. But people didn't realize that, at the end of the day, this guy, he was responsible, or his company was responsible for shipping so many slaves to the Americas. So many people lost their lives on his ships as well. So that was just something that, I wanted to put there, because this was big news back in 2020. So
So they pulled his statue down.
they pulled the statue down.
Next slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
There it is.
So they pulled his statue down. According to this, that 19,000 enslaved people were trafficked from the Ivory Coast and died on the journey. So that's a lot of people. I'm not sure what year that took place, but still, that's still a lot of people that that suffered because of his company. He himself died in 1721, but slavery continued for over 100 years, according to the emancipations that were signed, or the declarations that were signed.
Just want to say that I'm not in favor personally of tearing down these statutes. I believe that they should be left alone, because you need that evidence.
Yeah.
When the day of judgment comes, you need to know who did what and how and when. The record has to be there.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm not going to change my name. My name is Heinz. And I'm collecting from Germany. I'm collecting from Britain, from France, wherever they make the Heinz ketchup, right? I don't care how they spell it, right? So I'm not going to change my name to Melchizedek or to Christ, and just because I want to impress somebody. No, let it be that record is etched in stone, as it was, so that when the judge pronounces a judgment, he would have the record to as clear evidence.
Yeah, and going to that point, I think it is so important that we remember we don't have a very good memory. Israelites, especially, we do not have good memory, and that's why we have the book, and it reminds us time and time again. Remember what I did for you when you came out of Egypt. Remember what I did for you when I fed you. Remember how I fought your wars for you. Remember me. Remember the law, statutes, and commandments. We forget so easily, and we need as much help as possible remembering these things.
Yes.
And there's a few statues out there to say, well, you know what, this guy, instead of looking at him and say, well, this guy was great and whatever. Now you actually know the truth. This guy, his ships were ones that caused the death for so many of our forefathers. In addition to that, I think Elder Michael and I had this discussion before. Why don't they put up statues of William Wilberforce?
That's right. That's right.
Thaddeus Stevens. Why don't they put up
John Brown?
John Brown. I was just going to say that.
John Brown, yeah. Why don't they put up statues of these individuals so that we could remember what it is that they did as well? Because they were impactful to our lives. Their sacrifices are one of the reasons why we're here today. And this is all because the God of Israel chose these individuals to carry out those duties. So there you have it.
And since you're on that point, let me say this. I know people might not understand, but maybe one day we can put up a statue of Elder Shadrach.
Oh, absolutely.
Downtown Toronto or downtown New York or wherever, or
St. Louis,
London, or all of these cities.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
The reason why I'm saying this, just in case people are going to stone me, I'm telling you because Elder Shadrach was not the first to know that we were the descendants of the Israelites. He was the first to do something about it, to do something that was effective, to do something that was positive and constructive. Because had it not been for him, I would not know who I was. I couldn't spell Jesus when I came. I could hardly spell God, and I was 30 years old. So my point is, let us give credit where credit is due. Thank you, Elder Shadrach.
Thank you, absolutely. And look at the work he's done all across the world.
Yeah, and
Look, we're speaking right now. I'm in St. Louis.
yeah,
She's in the UK, right? You're in Canada.
exactly.
I mean,
We
there are
are
people
the
from all
result.
over the world based
We
upon the
are the
sacrifice and work that Elder Shadrach did in
yeah,
having us stand up to understand who we are. What a
yes.
great blessing to be a part of this family.
Yeah.
Yes. No, guys, you are looking at the results of Elder Shadrach's work. You have
Yes.
4 individuals from various places
Four
in the world,
corners of the earth.
right?
Yeah.
And we're here today having this discussion. And it's not something we sat down and planned and said who's going to say what, when, and how. We just
Right.
came together and we can gel because
We didn't, Officer Sherman, I have to say this. We did not put together two beautiful women and two other guys, right? It just happened. Sorry, Ellen Jeffrey.
oh,
That's okay. That's okay.
Beautiful and smart. It
yes.
usually doesn't go together, right?
It does
Wow.
here. It does here.
There you go.
So we have a comment here from Kevin. It
Yes.
says, I'm of a lineage, in brackets, it says, foundational Black America that did not accept brutality from police ancestor. Let's see, from police. Ancestor Henry Beryl Lowry. Grandfather Charles Gordy did fight back. We are the capital in capitalism. Interesting.
Yeah. Again, though, we're looking at it from, I see what he's going, and I think he's probably echoing some of what we said earlier, that we don't know our own value. But
Mm,
our value cannot be measured in dollars and cents, right? Because as I said at the beginning, and we echoed the point, all of us, the title to our ownership was never surrendered, even though we were sold, right? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob never gave up. He never signed a document and say, you can have my son, you can have my daughter. We are still his children. It's almost as if he rented us out. He leased us for our season, 400 years. Now that 400 years has expired. We have to return back to his house. We have to serve him in spirit and in truth. This is why we're here. We are more than just capital. That's what I'm trying to say. We
Mhm.
are supposed to be the rulers of this earth under the authority, the kingdom of our God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That's how we have to look at it.
amen to that. Guys, there is a book that I wanted to go into, and I did not. I just thought, what, it's just not the time for that right now. But it is a really good book that really discusses capitalism and slavery. It's a book written by a gentleman by the name of Eric Williams, and he later became the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in 1962. So if you want to go out there and get that book, that's up to you. I'm looking, we're not getting any profits from this, but we're just putting it out there because it is a good form of research. And
Right.
again, you could also get our Elder Shadrach's books, which is The Truth, the Lie, and the Bible, The Forgotten Israelites. In those books, it actually talks about some of these countries that, the rise and fall of many of these countries that held slaves in their country. What happened after 400 years and how their country was left in devastation. And you'll see that today with your very own eyes. You'll see Egypt left in devastation. You'll see Spain and Portugal left in devastation. You'll see Greece left in devastation. You'll see pretty much the continent of Africa left in devastation. You'll see so many countries because of what they did to the children of slavery.
Right.
The,
Where is the old Egypt that was so powerful, the most powerful on earth? At the end of the
put up
day,
nice again.
exactly. At the end of the day, and to your point, Officer Charmaine, Moses let us out, but he never ever fired one bow and arrow at the Pharaoh and his mighty army. We walked because of the power. We walked across the Red Sea because of the power of our Father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That is where our value lies. We have to remember our God. We also have to remember that this entire slavery process, this modern day slave trade, was started by Christianity. It was the 15th century decree. They call it a bull of the Pope. I don't have his name right now, but I could get that for you. That's easy. And they did what they were supposed to do, serving their God. Again, I repeat, let us not focus on that. Let us repent and return to our Father's house, to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, and to ask our Father for forgiveness so that we can serve him again in spirit and in truth. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, his hands are always open towards his children. Don't matter how bad you are, if you can just repent and come home, you will benefit accordingly.
Yeah, so I just want to thank our guests for coming on, and I hope that in the future you would accept another invitation. I think you've been so valuable, and I'm so honored. We are both honored to have you both on today, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves as well. And I also want to
Yes.
thank our guests that we can't see. Everybody that contributed in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes.
You are becoming our family. Thank you. And, we hope that you'll continue to visit us. And even after this session, please go back and put your comments in, and, we'll get back to you. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you, Elder. Thank you, Elder Andor. Peace.